as you've transitioned to online learning, and I guess we can kind of mostly focus it on your computer application courses, what have been the biggest challenges or pain points for you? And go ahead and type your responses in the chat, and Laura and your wives can kind of feed some of that to me, and then we'll talk about it. But I'll kind of start here with for me, I know most of the time I did teach online prior, so I've taught my application courses online, but a lot of them I taught in hybrid or full on-site face-to-face format. So I think probably my biggest one is just not seeing my students face to face and be able to sit down with them and say, oh, here's how you do this, in Excel or whatever. So, that has probably been one of the biggest challenges of just kind of the not being able to see my students face to face. I mean, I think some of, isolation issues have been one, just being home. I look at, like right now, I know you're all out there, but I'm just looking at my computer monitor and that's all I see. And so, so that definitely is an issue. And, and I think student engagement, how do we get our students engaged in this curriculum when they don't know me really, they don't see me. And so, any other thoughts coming out there, Laura?
Yes, actually, there's a lot of echoing what you're saying: academic integrity, participation, attendance, getting students to actually do the work and the exercises. Yeah, lots coming in here.
Excellent. Yeah. So all of those, and I can totally relate. Academic integrity, and we'll talk to that. I have some specific tools and tricks to kind of help you with that academic integrity. Student engagement, absolutely. I guess, I don't know, it's easier to ignore us as professors, I guess, in this online environment. So, easy to ignore an email or a discussion, post or announcement through Canvas or whatever LMS you're using. So yeah, quite a few pain points. Any others unique ones coming up out there?
Yeah, there was another one, Randy, around fair testing and evaluations.
Yeah, that is a good one. As to fair testing, yeah, how do you do that? And how do you prevent them? I mean, if you don't want them using the book, or if they're in a project, how do you keep them from going and finding that project on the internet somewhere, which they're out there? It's crazy. I searched some of the names of the projects in my book, and they're out there. It's amazing. So yeah, the fairness of that, the fairness of time. How long should these things be? Can they be, our final exams be 4 or 5 hours now, since it's remote? They have as much time to work on it as possible. I actually got called in on a student complaint or petition about an instructor doing a 5-hour final exam, and is that okay? Anyhow. So yeah, lots of issues out there. So I don't think we're really probably not lacking for pain points over the last year. Any last ones before we move on to the next thing?
The other one might be, and I think it's kind of related to engagement, especially in this new COVID era online environment. How do you, if you can't see the students' faces, how do you gauge what they're following, if they're following?
Yeah, and that is hard. It's hard we don't know that immediate feedback, or have a hard time with that immediate feedback, and know if they're, hey, is what we're doing getting across to you? And actually, I'm going to show you some of the tools that we have available in SIMnet really help with student engagement. So yeah, thank you for that. So
there's another one that came in too, Randy. It says multiple students writing from the same IP address.
Oh, wow. That is an issue. So with the same IP address, so using the same computer apparently, or one student doing work for another student. Can't imagine that. Holy cow. Yeah, so we will talk about the integrity side. We have some built-in tools that help with that integrity. So, and a couple other little tips and tricks to really help with integrity. So so let's switch to the positive side. We can complain all day long, and still it may not solve anything. We could, we might be able to have some tips and tricks around that. But what are some positive things that you've learned? What are some takeaways that you've learned since this transition to online and remote learning? And I'll start, but probably one of the biggest positive takeaways that I've had is, as soon as we transitioned online, the classes that I had that were either hybrid or on site, we moved them remote. And again, I felt like I was at a huge advantage because I taught many of my classes online. I think of all the classes I teach, there was only one that I had never taught online. And so we transitioned pretty easily. And so I was very thankful for that and having some online experience before this transition. But I think one of the biggest things is I transitioned my office hours to all on Zoom. So I just open up, I do it Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock, and then I'll schedule appointments if that doesn't work for students. But office hours, I get, I'm a morning person, so I start early and I open up my Zoom and just leave the window open, and I turn off my video and turn off my sound, so I'm able to work and do all that. And then as soon as I hear a little rustling around or whatever, I look, and I have students joining my office hours regularly, almost every day, and usually multiple students were on campus. I'd have students pop by every so often, but not all the time, and not nearly. I mean, the number of students that have come to my office hours in the last year, I would say, have to be 10 times or more higher than office hours on campus. Maybe a little less intimidating. People are used to a digital environment, used to Zoom, used to FaceTime, all those things. So maybe a little less intimidating than coming, on campus, into a building, into my office, all of that. And not that I'm an overly intimidating guy, but maybe Zoom, lessens out a little bit. So how about some other things out there, Laura, in your lives?
Yeah, we've got Fred, who sort of is mirroring what you said. Office hours via email or Zoom are much more engaging than having to go to a physical office.
Yeah. Any other things?
In my case, kids feel more comfortable that though I am attending my office from home, but they can see me, and it's not the case in which we are spending our commuting time while going to office. So kids are in the other room, but they have a psychological satisfaction that parents are at home, though we are doing the same work which we are doing in office.
Yeah, and that's true. I've been able to, again, with the office hours, and then in a lot of my classes, I teach computer applications, but I also teach business communication and business English and a few other things, some technical writing, but I'm able to, not only office hours, but then I will schedule, just all my classes are asynchronous. I don't do anything synchronous, just because the student population we serve they're working, they have families, all that. I don't want to add another hurdle to their educational pursuit. And so I've done all synchronous. When I do class meetings, which I'll do in each class a few times throughout the semester, usually at the beginning and in front of big projects or something like that, I'll schedule usually a couple times for the class meeting. I'll usually do one in the morning and one, early evening, late afternoon. And then I don't make them mandatory. I record them and I say, hey, if you can make it, awesome. I'd love to see your face and chat with you. If you can't, hey, that's okay. You're responsible for the recording. Whatever's in there, you're responsible for that. And I try to keep them really short, like 15 minutes, and just say, hey, your time is valuable. I don't want, I want to be able to get this information across as quickly as possible, and give you time to ask questions, all that. So most of these meetings are 15 to 20 minutes. By the time I cover what I want to cover and have them ask a couple questions, usually we're good. So that's been really helpful. Anything else from the positive takeaways?
Yeah, so we've got two here. Switching from one modality of learning to another, it becomes seamless. And then also two, being able to engage with international students. Their hours are different. You can start at different times when you are online. So It's a much more inclusive model.
Yeah, yeah, that is super interesting, and and that's a great point, because I have a student that got on when one of my office hours in the morning, and we're talking. He said, "Yeah, I have to get this in by," and he's in Croatia, and I was like, "Oh my goodness," and I'm on a Zoom office hour from somebody in Croatia that's taken my Excel class, and I thought, that's crazy, so I was curious. Tell me about why you take it anyway. So it was really fun. So that's a great point. I forgot about that. Yeah, you can learn anywhere, and so yeah, very, very exciting.
And Randy,
Yes.
while we are on the theme of international students, it might also be beneficial to perhaps talk about how leveraging technology to teach this course might benefit international students, given the fact that you're using technology, and if there are tidbits that can help, especially with the language barrier or the culture aspect or the accents. So how can technology, how can SIMnet potentially help on that front with the international population of students?
Yeah, great, great question. Great prompt there, Mirwais. Yeah, for international students, yeah, language barrier can be. So, maybe by not having to listen to me explain things, and I'll show you in SIMnet in just a little bit as we get in, is the student engagement part of SIMnet is really good. And the nice thing about, and again, I'll show you as we get into the SIMbooks and the projects, is it really helps with student engagement because they get immediate feedback. And those international students that may struggle a little bit with spoken language, and me being a fast talker and a loud talker, not being able to keep up with what I'm saying, can take their time, can kind of do this at their own pace and still get immediate feedback on that. So I think that helps all of our learners, at whatever level they are, whatever maybe language barriers what they have, whatever pace of learning that they do. Some of these technology tools that we have in SIMnet allow for them to actually be more engaged in this online learning environment, rather than sitting and listening to me lecture, because I'm pretty boring. At least my kids tell me so. So anyway, yeah. And so great question. So one last thing before we kind of move in here, what changes will you make as you transition back to hybrid, blended, fully on site? Whatever modality we return to come summer, fall. I know for me, we're back to we're going to kind of do a soft opening on our campus. So the classes that could not be transitioned to remote over the last year will be the first ones back on campus. And then they're going to really start trying to get more ESL classes, and those include the labs and the different programs, the nursing and dental hygiene and paramedics and different things like that. But then they're going to really work on getting back more ESL classes on campus, either in a hybrid or a fully face-to-face format, more math and science classes. And so not everything. My classes will still be fully remote on in the fall. And I somewhat chose that, but I probably, even if I requested them to be on site, I probably wouldn't have got it. But anyway, so I thought we'll get the ones back that need to be there. But one of the changes I will make is definitely the office hours. I will, even though I'll have physical office hours, I'm going to keep doing Zoom office hours every morning and just say, hey, you want to pop in? Awesome. I'd love to see your face. If it's just to say hi and share a cup of coffee remotely, I'll be glad to do that. So how about others takeaways or things that they're going to change as we transition back?
Yeah, we've got one note here from Michelle. She says, moving online forced me to learn the online course platform and finding new tools to reduce the time spent marking. So for example, creating rubrics for fair and consistent marking, which she can continue to use if and when they move back to face-to-face.
Yes, you know what, it's almost like that leads right into what we're going to be talking about, because some of the things I'm going to show you in SIMnet that we have built in, it does not only, I think, enhance student engagement and give that immediate feedback that that really helps engagement and helps our students, not only engagement, but helps with learning, but it allows us more time to do some of those other things, to have some hands-on discussions and projects in class where, okay, some of that learning can take place outside. They could do the, the learning part, this is what's going to be called the SIMbook, and some of these projects outside of class and get that immediate feedback. So that frees up our time to do some other things. So yeah, very good. Any other things on the changes?
Yeah, another one from Howard is that because, sorry, I've got some contractors outside working. Because of the move to online, people learned a lot of new tools, a lot of new ways of doing things, just like you were talking about the office hours. So Howard is saying, incorporate the new tools that they have learned during this transition, going back to the transition to the traditional learning or whatever it might be, but to take that new learning with them to the traditional course format, if you will.
Yeah, and that's really good. I heard, and this was not even, I don't even think it was related to education, but I was listening to a podcast, and it was dealing with things that had kind of been shut down, and then that transition to opening back up. And the person I was listening to said, you know, I don't want to just start back up. I kind of want to start over, you know, and take those things that were good already and keep those. The things that may not have been so good, get rid of those. The things that I've learned during this time, incorporate those in. So thinking of that, you know, not just starting back up, but actually kind of starting over. Yeah, how could we, you know, we're in a unique opportunity to kind of reshape the way we teach these application courses. So yeah, very good. Any last things before we transition on?
Nope,
Okay.
I think we're good.
Not this time.
Yeah, we'll keep going here, and there we go. Okay, so we're going to go into, I'm going to give you a little hands-on demo of SIMnet. And we talked about some of these things: engagement, integrity, you know, student learning. How do we measure that? All that, evaluation of skills. And so we have quite a few different tools within SIMnet. So what SIMnet is our learning and evaluation technology platform that goes along with our books. So our books have the content in it. Well, all that content is in SIMnet. So really, they can do everything. I tell my students, hey, you don't have to buy a physical book. Everything that you need, all of the entire book is in SIMnet and more. And so really nice. If they want a physical book, hey, knock yourself out. Go buy a used one online, save some money. But you know, you need the digital access code, which is much cheaper than a physical book. And with SIMnet, also you have lifelong access to it. So at this point, I'm going to jump out here and talk a little bit about some of these different objects in SIMnet, and just show you why and how it makes that transition to online, to remote learning, and really even as you transition back to possibly a hybrid or blended format, how you use that. And I'll kind of tell you how I do it in some of my classes. So let me exit out of here and minimize that. And I'll pull over SIMnet. Okay, so this is SIMnet. This is the student side of SIMnet. Now, SIMnet integrates seamlessly with LMSs. So Canvas, Blackboard, D2L Brightspace, you know, all of those integrates where, you know, as a student clicks on the assignment in the LMS, it takes them right into SIMnet. And I have this demo class set up here, and it's kind of a office class essentially. So a little bit, you know, of Word, Excel, Access, PowerPoint, and kind of have some intro chapters. But I'll kind of walk you through here. I'll use Excel as an example, and one of my favorite classes to teach. But first thing, we have what are called the SIMbooks in here. So the SIMbook is really the printed book. So they don't have to get a big old, you know, 700 or 800 page book to, you know, and flip through the pages and do all that. It's all in here, one-to-one content with the printed textbook. So I'll just go ahead. You know what? Let's do chapter 2. I like chapter 2 is a little meatier, so we'll try that. the nice thing is all HTML5, all compliant, all of that stuff. So really nice to use and accessible for students. Like scroll up and down on the page. It's all kind of set up by student learning outcomes. They can go to the next one, next student learning outcome here, and then scroll down. So this, what might be a few pages in the book, is just one scrollable page in a SIMbook here. There is a table of contents over here that they can easily jump around to the different areas in the book. They can bookmark things and make some notes, print. They can change size if they want. They can, yeah, do this wherever. So really nice. There's a little search and a little help, all sorts of things all built in. So better than even the textbook is the SIMbook, because it has these interactive activities also. These show me, guide me, let me try. And the way we wrote the book is we tried to keep it very tight, because we know, I mean, my students aren't going to read a textbook. You know, they might, maybe my very best ones might, my overachievers, but most aren't going to read a textbook. They just want, hey, how do you do it? How do you type a formula? That's it. And so that's kind of what we did. We built these how-tos here, and we just made them generic. We did not tie it into or build it into a project. We have the teaching part of it here, are the how-tos, and many of them have these interactive activities. Show me, guide me, let me try. Show me is a video that will show them exactly how to do it. Guide me is kind of a click path step, telling them exactly what to do. And then the let me try tells them what to do, but not how to do it. So for the SIMbook, I assign this as the very first thing every chapter for my students. So I assign the whole SIMbook like a lesson, and each of these SIMbooks chapters have around 20 of these interactive activities. So it is a lesson. So I assign that they have to do the let me try out of each one. They can do the show me, guide me. They don't have to. They just have to complete the let me try to get the point for that particular one. So as I click on this, it's going to take me into this simulated area. It front loads so that there's no lag or anything. And you'll notice it looks and feels a heck of a lot like the desktop application in Excel. They can click here and drop down list. They can hunt and peck around on the different tabs here on the ribbon, all sorts of things. Go to the backstage view. They can do all sorts of things without being marked wrong. It's not until there's some actionable item that is done here. Let's say insert a page break. Okay, then it's gonna say, hey, no, you're supposed to type this formula, not insert a page break. So, and it's all set up in mastery learning. They can do this as many times as they want. And it's about introducing them to the different skills that are gonna be in the chapter that will then be applied in the projects that they'll be doing. So on this one, says, type this formula. So I can do equals and type B4 and times, and then I can click in the cell, so B6, okay? And then, so you could do both. So it allows a lot of leeway in here if students want to do it different ways. So we try to build that in, and hopefully I got that correct. And as I do, it's gonna move me on to the next simulated environment here. So the next interactive activity. And it jumps to the show me. You could students and I have a little tutorial video that I create that I share with any instructors who use this, and so on and so on. So this is a SIMbook. Think of it like a lesson, okay, that students would go through, be introduced to the topics that are going to be covered in that chapter. A nice, clean, simulated environment they can do on, most any device, really any device. And so, yeah, really nice and a good way to learn the content. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of the SIMbook. And Amir Wise and Laura, if there are questions along the way, please feel free to interrupt me, and we'll continue on, and I'll answer those. And yeah. So I'm going to kind of jump around. So that's the.
Sorry,
SIMbook.
Randy, there was one question that came up.
Sure.
From Fred. Is there a way that Simnet can alert instructors that students did the let me try it?
Say that one more time. I lost the last part.
Sorry, one second here. Sorry, I'm just trying to go back. How do we get, as instructors, how do we get alerted that students did the let me try or guide me?
that they completed it?
Yes.
Yeah. So what happens? Yeah, great question. So as they work through the SIMbook and complete the whatever about 20 let me tries in the book, as they're doing that, their grade is just being updated. So as I exit out here, well, actually one thing, as I complete each of these, it puts a check mark by them. So that's kind of nice there for the student, a visual for the student. As I exit out of the SIMbook here, it's going to take me back and show me my progress on it. And so I've only completed one of 19 in this chapter. So I have quite a few to go. And it tells me, okay, in SLO 2-1, I've completed one of 3. And some of them have none, so that's fine. But what this does is it automatically records in the gradebook. So these grades get automatically posted. So it's graded automatically. Students get immediate feedback. That's that engagement part. They don't have to wait for me to tell them, hey, you did that one right. It automatically tells them they got it right, and they move on to the next one. So it really does enhance student engagement.
Randy, there's one more around, if I could add on to that.
Sure.
So as you were talking about the 3 different ways student can learn a certain skill in SIMnet, you've got the Show Me, which is a video, the Guide Me, which is a little more interactive, step-by-step hand-holded, and the Let Me Try, which is a full-on simulation. So we could potentially make all 3 of those modalities of learning mandatory so that they appear in the gradebook. But by default, it is the Let Me Try that is defaulted to be completed by the students, correct?
That is correct. Thank you, Mirwais. That's a great, yeah, and that's, again, beauty of this tool, as in many of the technology tools, but SIMnet especially, it allows you to customize it how you want. You're going to set up your class differently from how I set up my class. And we're all going to do it. I mean, I work with hundreds of professors around the country. No one does it exactly like I do, and it's not right the way I do it. It's just the way I do. We all do it a little different. And the beauty of it is, like Mirwais said, you can customize all of these. You can customize the SIMbooks as we get into the project, same thing, and the exams and all of that. So yeah, great point there.
One more, Randy, around what you were showing how to do a certain skill. So as you know, in SIMnet, there could be umpteen different ways of doing a certain skill, right? Of achieving a certain task. Does SIMnet account for all those variations?
Yes, it does. So in the simulated environment, it will take most anyway. And that's why I did that one example just because I could show you, hey, I could type in the cell, I can click another cell to have it put in there, all of that. So unless in the simulated environment, it says to do it a specific way, whatever way works. So students can do it. And we build that into the simulated environment, that grading. Now, as we get into projects, auto-graded projects, then really they can do it anyway. If they want to, to make a cell reference absolute, if they want to type in the dollar signs in front of the different arguments, they can do that. If they want to do the F4 to do it, they can do that as well. So yes, all of those different ways. And even so far as, let's say this last round with Office 20, what was it? With 2016 and 365, there was a difference between when one of them, Excel 2016 didn't have S statements. So like if S, it just had if statements, where 365 has if S statements. And now there's a whole bunch of F statements or S statements. There are those series of things. So if S is awesome. And so what we did in the projects, in the grading of the projects, is, hey, student can do a nested if statement, or they can do an if S. So we account for numerous ways to do most anything. And so that's the SIMbook. Again, auto-graded, really engaging, mastery learning, gives them, introduces them to the topics that they're going to apply in the live environment. Okay. Second thing that I have my students do is I have them do the pause and practice projects. So throughout the chapter, every 2, 3, 4 student learning outcomes, there's a project, and these projects, and there tends to be anywhere from 3 to 5, usually 3 or 4 pause and practice projects per chapter. And so it's after a few student learning outcomes, and it's where they can stop and practice on the skills that they're learning. Student data files are embedded in here. Instructions are really detailed. They're very guided, you know, telling them what to do and how to do it. So this is, we take them from one step of SIMbook, mastery learning environment. They could do it as many times they want, all that, to the next step, which I do pause and practice projects, which these are hand graded. So I still do grade these projects. We're going to have some other projects I'll show you, and capstones that are auto graded. But I still like to have a little bit of, I don't like everything in my class auto graded, but you can set it up however you want. If you don't want to hand grade anything, you don't have to. So these are pause and practice projects. And again, guided type projects telling students what to do and how to do it. And there's, and they all build on each other. So in this one here, in this chapter, there are 3 of them, 1, 2, and 3. And so as they get to number 2, it starts with the data file here that's in the SIMbook. As they get to 2, it'll say, hey, open up the file that you just finished. And then as they get to 3, same thing there. So they all build on each other. So what I do is I have them do the pause and after the SIMbook, do the pause and practice projects, and then just upload the final solution file. I don't want 2-1 and 2-2. I just want the final solution file. And if they go to 2-3 and start on it, they can't, because they don't have the previous file and the one before that. So anyway, it's a really good, for me and for my students, I think this is one of the best learning tools. It does take a little more time, you know, because I do hand grade these, and I, you know, usually grade them the day in the morning after the due date. Sometimes if I have time the day before, I'll start grading the ones that come in early, but I can get through a whole class of 30 or so in hour and 15, something like that. So it really doesn't take long. And I kind of rough grade them just to make sure they're on the right track, actually doing the work. And then after the pause and practice projects, I do move on to SIMnet projects, which are auto graded. So these pause and practice projects, you could choose to use them or not. I will say one thing about just as far as engagement. So if you do some online lecturing for your remote class, I don't do a whole lot of online, like synchronous lecturing or even recorded lecturing. But if you do, these would be great projects to use for that. So if you have a recorded lecture or a synchronous lecture, pause and practice would be a great way to go through many of the skills that are covered in that chapter. When back in BC, before COVID, I used to teach the Excel class a lot hybrid. And so, you know, we'd have maybe one night class a week or one time during the week that I'd have them. And I would always use these pause and practice projects as demo projects in class. So to go through, show them the skills, have them be hands-on on a computer and work through it on their computer while I'm kind of demoing it. So anyway, put these in your pocket. You can use them or not. I do use them in my class, but you don't have to. So,
Randy,
yes.
Yeah.
There are a couple of questions related to projects and the compatibility between Windows versus MacBooks or Macs, and then versus Chromebooks as well. But maybe you want to, because this is a pause and practice, which are manually graded, perhaps you want to save that for the auto-graded projects to talk about.
Yeah, you know what? And because I'm going to move into the other projects also, but just know for all of our projects, okay, now with the exception of Excel or Access, because Access there's no Mac. That's not a thing. So not available on the Mac. But for all of our projects, for Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, we have Mac instructions for everything. For the pause and practice, we have Mac instructions. And as we get into the SIMnet project, so I'll exit out of there, we do have Mac instructions for all the projects. So all the SIMnet projects in here are Mac compatible as well. A great question about the Chromebooks. We've also, because with this transition to remote, a lot of schools just threw the Chromebooks out there to students. Well, you can't do, you can't really, there's no desktop version of Office on a Chromebook. It's all browser-based, Office Online. Most of this SIMnet stuff, the SIMbooks, you could do it anywhere, but the projects, the pause and practice projects, the SIMnet projects are all based on the desktop version of Office 365 or 2019 or even back to 2016 or future versions coming up, which I'll hit on in just a bit. But anyway, so yes, so the SIMnet project, we have let's go to this one here. We have Mac instructions, and what happens is when a student opens up one of the SIMnet projects, SIMnet automatically detects whether it's a Windows or Mac machine. I'm on a Windows machine, but if I were on Mac, it would just switch over and it would give me Mac instructions here with Mac screenshots and all of that, and account for those little differences. And Macs and Windows are getting closer. Every version, the iterations get a little closer, but Macs still have that dual navigational structure, which drives me crazy. They have their drop-down menu along with the ribbon in Office. I wish it would go to a unified ribbon, but it's way above my pay grade. So anyway, because it is, we do have these instructions. But as far as Chromebooks, we have separate projects that are built just for Chromebooks. So if I'm working with a college back east, somewhere in the States, and a lot of their students have Chromebooks or even iPads, and they can use these Office Online projects for those. So there are options out there for you that are all graded projects. They work wonderfully. And but yeah, so these are Office. These are SIMnet projects, and when they open it up, the instructions are right there. The start file is right here. So now we'll get into a little bit of the plagiarism and the integrity thing. The start file, when this is downloaded, it automatically tags it with the unique code. So you as an instructor can decide, hey, if it's a plagiarized file, so if I take Mirwise's file and I'm going to upload it as my own, you as the instructor get to decide, do you allow that plagiarized file to be uploaded, or do you block it at the upload level? And so I used to, when I was on campus and teaching face-to-face more, I used to allow it to be uploaded, and then I would see in my grade book indication that it's plagiarized, and then I could, have a little heart-to-heart with those students that and usually within the class, but we've had to get it from other schools or other places. And but now, since we've gone to remote, I just block it, and the students will get just a message that pops up saying, hey, the file you're trying to submit is not the correct file. And they know. They know that I know I'm uploading Mirwise's file, and they know that they're uploading a plagiarized file. So that integrity thing is really nice. Now, getting around, could I do Mirwise's project and upload it for? Yeah, there's certain things that I don't think we can ever 100% eliminate, and eliminate the plagiarism and ensure integrity. But we have a lot of built-in things that help. So, and this being one of them. So,
and Randy,
yes.
So not only can students not take somebody else's starting file or their solution file and upload it as their own, even if they work with their own start file that they download from the project instructions, even if they cut and paste certain columns or rows or cells from another file, it will still detect right down to the cell level, because we have embedded those codes that you were talking about, those randomized codes in various parts of that start file, which is unique to each student. So even if a student is using their own start file, but if they copy and paste a certain section of that spreadsheet and paste it into their start file, SIMnet will detect that and pinpoint exactly which student, which school, and which project it came from.
Yeah, and you're right on, Mirwise, and it's really detailed. And I've had students do it. I had students copy the thing wholesale and upload it, and it says, hey, this whole file came from this school, this term, this class, this student. I mean, it really gives detail. Then I've had actually the same student decide, oh, I can't get away with that, so I'm going to copy and paste. Same thing. Well, then it says, okay, all of this content has been copy and pasted in there, and really detail where it came from and all that. So it does help with the integrity issue, and it goes along with this student, these projects. I give them multiple attempts. I give them 3 attempts. They get immediate feedback, and I'll kind of show you. I did I'm going to upload, or I already downloaded this, and so I'm going to upload a file. I just did a few steps on this one, but I'll upload here from my desktop. And when I upload, if they're not ready to submit, they can say no, and it'll save it in the Simnet cloud, and they can pull that down later and continue working on it. But I'll say yes, submit, and it grades it almost immediately, gives them immediate feedback here. And again, nice thing for student engagement where they don't have to wait for me to grade it and get my feedback. They have it immediate here, and they get partial credit on things, some things, the things that are correct are green. So I did some things correct. I did a couple things just to show you, like, for example, I didn't format this one cell correctly. And I want to show you, it doesn't, we worked really hard with the to eliminate what would be considered cascading errors. So if I make a little error here, a formatting error on step 3, it's not going to cascade down and make everything else wrong from then on. So we really work to isolate each individual skill, each, what goes in there, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet or Access or PowerPoint or Word, all of them, we've really worked to make the grader super accurate and try to eliminate those cascading errors. And again, great feedback that they get. Everything's annotated. It'll tell them, hey, that's what I was supposed to do here. This is what I was supposed to do, to tell you what you did wrong. I mean, this tells me, hey, this doesn't have the correct number format. That's it. So it's as detailed, it's more detailed than I would be able to do for a class of 30. So really, really good feedback. Again, enhancing learning, enhancing engagement, working on integrity and eliminating plagiarism or minimizing it, I should say. I don't think we could ever eliminate it, but anyhow. So SIMnet projects are awesome, love them, and students could go back and say, I didn't do very well, I got 22%. So your students will do better than I did, I promise. So most of them will. And but they can go back and look at their previous attempts here. So I have a couple attempts, and there's little best practices. But those are SIMnet projects. Any other questions pop up about SIMnet projects? Because I'm gonna go through the next few things pretty quickly here to give Daniel plenty of time.
There is a question just quickly saying, can you show us what the instructions look like for an auto-graded project? I think that is what you were showing, right?
Yeah. So I'll go back into that specific one. So I go into Excel, this project here, and as soon as you go in, the instructions are right there. And the nice thing about that is they have these little check boxes. So, hey, download the start file. As I do that, it checks it off, and then automatically highlights and moves to the next one to keep students focused. Because a lot of times they're splitting their screen or they're reading this off their phone, and doing that. So they can go through and see it highlights all that. And it really is a slick feature here. And yeah, that was added not too awfully long ago, but those are the instructions. And again, they get Mac or Windows, depending on what type of machine they're using, and it auto detects that.
Randy, there was sorry.
And one more thing, each of the projects also kind of have the skills that are covered and the student learning outcomes that are covered in each project. So at a quick glance, you can kind of see what the students are going to do. So sorry, Laura, to cut you off there.
No, my apologies. There was another few questions related to projects. Are there MOS aligned projects? And I think you already touched on this, but there are separate projects for Chromebook as well.
That is correct. And so the MOS, yes, we have just because that demand has we've been hearing more and more about it in the market. Yes, we have MOS SIMbooks, and we have MOS, so the learning component, the SIMbook like I showed you, that has all those skills in there. We have MOS projects, and then we're working on MOS capstone projects for each of the applications. So now, the books that we have in here, they cover the MOS content, and you could build some specific lessons for MOS, but they cover it, just not quite in the order of MOS. I don't really like how MOS structures things, but they get the skills covered in MOS. So students going through, say a 2-unit Excel class would cover the content, or 3-unit Excel class would cover the content covered in MOS. So yeah, and they get lots of practice at it. And the second part was the what was the second?
I believe you mentioned this, just to reiterate. Are there separate Chromebook projects?
Yeah, and those would be called, we call them Office Online, so browser-based Office. this. So Word online and Excel online and PowerPoint online, no access online, kind of like for the Mac. So yes, we do have those. And let me show you a couple other things because I'm kind of running out of time here, but we have exams. So exams, you can call them quizzes, you can call them whatever you want. Basically, they're simulated content like the SIMbook, and they just cover it by skill. So if you wanted to just do a little exam or quiz on pivot tables, you could gather all the skills, all the simulated skills that we have on pivot tables and make a little quiz on that. You could do a quiz per chapter. You could do a quiz or a test for multiple chapters. You could customize how many attempts they get on each question, how many attempts they get on the entire quiz. And one other thing for plagiarism and integrity, if you do exams, is what I do is I tend to do a pool of questions. So take all of the simulated content from chapter 1 and maybe do 15 questions random. So each student's going to get a different one in a different order, all of that. And then you can filter by difficulty level so students would get the same level of difficulty of exams. So exams are easy to create. You can create them based on a chapter or certain content, or MOS. If you want to do a MOS exam, you could do that as well. And yeah, so we have exam simulated content, auto-graded, again, immediate feedback for students, and you could even delay it to even add another layer of integrity. If you say, hey, I want to delay the results until after the due date, until after all students have taken the exam, you can do that also. So that would prevent, me sharing my work with mere Wise, which would not be, not the right thing to do. So anyway.
Randy, is there an opportunity to perhaps show that policy setting around IP lockdown restrictions?
Yeah, I can.
Because that did come up as a challenge in the beginning. So
let me see what I can. Yeah, so when I'm set it now, what you're seeing now is on the instructor side. So this is the instructor side of SIMnet. I've been showing you the student side of SIMnet, and now this is the instructor side. This is my class here, the one that I've been showing you. So I'm gonna edit that class, and then for exams here, what I can do on these and the preferences is I'm able to add a certain IP address. So if I want to lock it down to a certain range that, hey, they can, as we get back on campus or whatever, that, hey, they can only take these exams on these certain IP addresses, you can do that. So yeah, that's the good point, Mirwise. Yeah, and again, it goes back to just the customization of the content, the delivery, how you do things. I mean, there's so much there to customize. And again, you're probably not going to set up your class exactly the way I have my class set up. We all kind of do it a little different. The beauty of SIMnet, it doesn't have to be the same. There's so many options available for you out there. And so exams, quizzes, any combination of it. We have also what are called SIMpaths. I'm going to kind of rip through the last couple things here real quick because they're all kind of the same. The exams are simulated content. It looked a lot like the SIMbook and look and feel of that. SIMpaths are a somewhat adaptive learning tool where you could set up a maybe on the early chapters of Word or PowerPoint, you're like, oh, the students know this. You could set up a pre-test and then have a lesson and then a post-test. And a lesson would be like the SIMbook, but a pre-test that they would do, and then whatever they got wrong would be put into the lesson. They would review that, remediate on that, and then take the post-test. And you have total customization of, hey, do they have to do the things that they got right in the pre-test in the lesson? Yes or no? And same thing, do they get tested in the post-test on things they already got right? Yes or so you can customize those however. So SIMpaths are another tool in there. Again, student engagement, auto-graded right away. Lessons, you can create custom lessons if you don't want to necessarily follow a SIMbook chapter. You can create, or you want to remediate on something, give them some more information about H&B lookups or something like that. You could do a small little lesson on a topic like that. So So those are, and then finally the thing that are some capstone projects. So we do have capstone projects that cover multiple chapters, and they do get digital credentials or digital badging, SIMnet badge for that. But these capstone projects are really good, more comprehensive. And I'll say one more thing about the projects, because our whole goal is to take students from, you know, kind of low stakes SIMnet or mastery learning, they can do it over and over, to maybe pause and practice projects where they start to get to apply the skills they're learning in the desktop application in smaller chunks, to a SIMnet project, a guided SIMnet project, which are kind of the hand-holding, telling students what to do and how to do it, lots of screenshots, to the next time we call independent projects, which basically pull back some of that instructional scaffolding and make it harder for students, because we tell them what to do, just not specifically how to do it. So we're just taking them step by step. My whole goal in writing this book series and you know, doing all this stuff is transferability of skills. I want students to take the skills they're learning and to be able to transfer them to a different context. That's it, whether that be personal, professional, whatever, but to be able to take it with them, put them in their pocket, put them in their toolbox, and take it with them and apply it down the line. So lots of different tools and different objects to help you as an instructor, you know, give you some time back in your day, for one, as far as not having to hand grade everything. You can choose to grade some things if you want. You don't have to. There we go. So yeah, it's up to you. I still hand grade stuff. I grade pause and practice projects, and as we get to more advanced capstone projects, I use some that are outside of SIMnet and hand grade those as well. So yeah, so I think I'm just about at the end of my time. Any quick questions?
Randy, I'm wondering if we could hold questions for the Q&A.
Sure.
You did touch on something that I think would segue quite nicely into Randy's section. Could you, or sorry, to Daniel's section, could you maybe touch on the digital badging a little bit before we head in to the career readiness part?
Yes, and that's a great way to segue into it. So within SIMnet, we do offer some digital credentials. It's not MOS, but it is a digital credential that students can share on LinkedIn or other social media platforms. And for a prospective employer, they could click on that and go see the actual skills that were learned in that are covered in that digital badge. We have 4 different levels, and we call them belts, kind of like karate belts. So we have a white belt, a yellow belt, a purple belt, and a black belt. And so the white and the yellow belt are kind of at the office level content. So like the first 4 chapters of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, all that. And it's the first one is completing all of the Let Me Tries in a SIMbook. So if they complete, let's say Word, if they complete all of the Let Me Tries in the first 4 chapters of Word SIMbook, they automatically get a white belt digital credential that they can go and share on LinkedIn. And if you type in SIMnet digital credential on LinkedIn, you'll see a whole bunch of, Wise, do you know the number that they offer? I mean, it's a huge number. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
We launched it middle of 2019. We didn't do a massive campaign around it, but to date, we have issued around 380,000 badges and credentials worldwide.
Yeah.
It's growing organically without us doing any marketing or pushing around it. Yeah. And it's being shared on LinkedIn. And when you click on somebody's badge or credential, it quantifies exactly the skills that they have mastered. So now employers don't have to rely on the word of the mouth of the viewee saying, yeah, I took a course in Excel. Now you can quantify what you mastered in that course. What skills did you master in the yellow belt? And what's nice about LinkedIn is as soon as those skills come up, automatically on LinkedIn, there are jobs that need those skills, and it shows the salary ranges. So it's kind of a motivation for students to get these badges and get out and get ready for the employment sector, if you will.
Yeah, thank you. That's perfect. And so, yeah, so we have the white belt is completing those SIMbook chapters. The yellow belt is completing a capstone project at the office level content. The purple belt is completing all of the SIMbook chapter, all the Let Me Tries in all of the SIMbook chapters in each app in one of the applications. So all of the Word chapters, they get a purple belt, and then a black belt is a simulated exam covering, you know, a large portion of the content in the book. So so yeah, those 4 levels, and I think looks like I'm right at the top of the hour, and I'm right on time, which I'm usually I'm a loud talker, a fast talker, and a long talker usually, and so I'll turn this over to Daniel Bird from Isograd and let him talk about that, and then we'll talk about Isograd and TOSA, and then we'll save some time for Q&A at the end. So thanks for your great feedback and your questions and comments.
Excellent. Thanks, Randy. Well, as we get the deck up here, and Laura introduced me. So I am the Vice President of Sales for Isograd. We are the developers of the Isograd TOSA industry certifications for Microsoft Office. And Randy touched on it briefly. I mean, our certifications align nicely with SIMnet, but I really want to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. With over 25 years of experience in industry, working both in industry from corporate development to academia, I want to share some statistics that we have been tracking, especially as a certification company. And I think 2 of these statistics nobody would really argue with. I mean, Burning Glass said, you know, about a little over a year ago, identified that over 78% of middle skill jobs require spreadsheet and word processing skills. And we know that that's important just because International Data Corps, they have been tracking data and watching where job skills fit, and Excel continues to move from in their top 5. Now it's number 3 of the top 5 skills that people need to have. So, you know, as you're looking at teaching Excel and maybe helping your students understand, now, why am I taking this course? Why do I really need to learn Excel? The reality is that, you know, the present day, over 78% of those jobs are requiring people to have those skills. But more importantly, the huge increase in people having basic computer skills. And as we have the opportunity, and I have the opportunity to talk to, you know, Fortune 500 companies, it's interesting how many of these companies say they still struggle with individuals who have just graduated from, you know, college, university. They don't have some of the basic digital literacy skills as it relates to a computer, but specifically around software like Excel, meaning they're still struggling with things that you and I might take for granted when it comes to even basic formulas, or even just understanding what a pivot table is. So, you know, industry just keeps saying, look, we need more people who understand this. So, I mean, again, you're the ones teaching those courses and trying to help the student connect the why behind why they're taking your course. It really is kind of tied to this data. Now, as we go to the next slide, you know, as we look at kind of what's next for us, though, as we talk about our Gen Z, right? That generation, 65% of the jobs that they will perform don't even exist yet. So in talking to individuals who are in that Gen Z range is always interesting, because they're like, well, what do I do? And I'm like, well, I would get the most computer skills I can, because it's all going to revolve around having good computer skills. And it doesn't mean that you know, they're going to go off and program the next set of robots to build something. But as more and more jobs are evolving into, you know, kind of data and analysis and, you know, BI and things like that, companies are just trying to figure out, how do we leverage all this data and all this technology? So we'll see a lot of these Gen Z individuals do jobs that will kind of springboard from things that normally are considered basic, meaning, you understand Excel, but now can we accelerate that so that you really understand how to use VBA in Excel? And if you can do that, then we can progress this individual into these careers that are totally unknown to us today. And so I think that's always helpful in helping those individuals and even those people that are younger. We have the opportunity, I'll speak to high school students, is, look, I can't say it enough, just take as much computer related education as you can, because it will definitely pay out. The great thing about using SIMnet is that it gives the students that real world opportunity to continue to get their hands on projects and continue to reinforce the things that you're teaching. But that's what they're going to do when they go to work. They're going to be given tasks that they have to perform. And it's really going to come from your course using SIMnet that's going to help kind of reinforce those skills so they're ready for what's next. Now, as we move to the next slide, this statistic is brand new. It just came out in the last 3 days. And I will tell you, I was surprised when I saw that. And some of this is a little bit related to COVID. So they've tied that into COVID, but also looking at what's happening. Currently, 90% of organizations are redesigning job roles across organizations. Now, it doesn't mean that they're eliminating every job. But I can tell you, we work with a large Fortune 500 consulting company, and it's interesting. We're working with them on a project for everybody who is what they call a new joiner. So they've been offered their first job after they graduate, and they're trying to determine how do they upskill them so that they're job ready, because those jobs have changed even in the last 2 or 3 years, and most of it's changed around the software that they use. It's interesting in this organization, the 2 pieces of software these people use more and more frequently now are Excel and PowerPoint. So they've been spending their time kind of redesigning those new jobs to align around the skills that they have. So yes, COVID has brought on some of the redesign, but a lot of it too, even in jobs that we would consider to be the non-traditional roles where technology didn't really exist, even those jobs are changing, where kind of a blue collar job, there's an expectation that you have digital skills. And it's interesting because I just did a presentation a few weeks ago for some colleges here in the US. And we looked at some entry level roles that were blue collar jobs. And one of them was, they named it nice, it was a sanitation engineer, but it was the person responsible for housekeeping in the medical industry in a hospital. They wanted them to have Excel skills, not a job that I would have ever thought that somebody who is responsible to making sure that a hospital is clean needs to know Excel. However, as you look deeper into this hospital, it's a pretty big hospital chain or a healthcare chain, is those individuals are putting data in Excel about the things that they're doing or tracking inventory. So again, all these jobs that are being redesigned are less about replacing jobs, but figuring out how do we best align these jobs to where technology is going to take us as well. And on our next slide, we'll kind of see and look at some of these jobs that require Excel. Now, I don't want anybody to get excited. You see this red line that goes up and down like a heartbeat. Red isn't bad. I've showed this before, and everybody panics a little bit. Really, all red shows is kind of what's the trend for job growth within these roles. And so it's interesting, we said a financial analyst, I mean, it's a good paying job. They expect it to have it will grow, but at a much slower rate than an economist or a statistician. So all of these jobs, these are just a handful, and some of these probably make sense to us. All these jobs require people to use Excel. However, their use of Excel is different based on the job role. So it's not about having a broad knowledge of Excel. It's about having these people understand Excel, but then more importantly, for the types of jobs they're interested in, how do you use Excel to get the desired outcomes that you want? But also understanding that, I look at it quite simply and say, wow, having Excel skills on top of everything that I might have went to school for allows me to make a very nice income. But I can also see that there's a growth trajectory all tied into Excel. And it's not to mean that they don't need to know Word, because they'll need to know that. They'll need to understand some kind of email system, Outlook or whatever, and software that's specific. But it's really important to recognize that industry keeps saying we need people with more skills. And day in, day out, the number one thing that people come to us for, as even though we're a certification company, Isograd works with companies who are trying to assess individuals in the recruitment phase. The number one software that we provide assessments on is Excel. In fact, we work with a banking institution that regardless of whether you come with a degree, and in that program you use Excel, or maybe you come with another certification, you will take a TOSA assessment because they really want to know what it is that you know and what you can do. So that's hopefully is important to really understand, wow, we're teaching these skills, but Excel is it's not one of those things that will probably go away. It's just how it's going to be used and who will be using it will increase over time. And as we get to the last slide, I think it's important we recognize, because somebody, you brought up, what about certification, right? Certification is important in the instance that 91% of hiring managers are saying, hey, they consider it as part of their hiring process. It's not the end all be all. It doesn't matter what certification is. We know with our TOSA certifications, it definitely gets the attention of hiring managers, but that's really the purpose of certification. That on top of a degree or a certificate, depending on what type of program you're in, allows an individual to stand a little taller in a stack of resumes, if you will. So having those outcomes that are truly recognized by industry and validated by a third party help kind of not only validate the knowledge and skills of your students, but in essence, they help validate the program that you're running, because you're able to show, look, these are the additional things that our students will get by coming through us. But it's also helpful in keeping students engaged in the process or choosing to attend your institution, maybe over some other option, because they recognize that there is benefit on top of the degree and on top of the course of study. So I know we didn't have much time to dive into this, but we really want to make sure that we can cover some questions that you might have from the things that I've covered or Randy did. But hopefully, as we've just shared some statistics that are current, they're relevant to not only today's world, the impact of COVID, but as we look ahead, we see great growth in job roles. We know that Excel is important. And we know that industry is really kind of scratching their head to figure out, how do we know what people know and how can we validate that as well? So with that, Laura, I'll turn that over to you so we can get to some Q&A.
Maybe.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Mirwais, you wanted to jump in there. Please go.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on to what Daniel was saying there around the certifications. So the last slide was certification, and I know Isograd, the company that you work for, Daniel, you are into a certification called TOSA. We all know about the MOS certification. Do you sort of want to touch on a little bit the difference between the two? I think most of our audience is aware of MOS certification, but how is TOSA different, perhaps?
Yeah, and I want to be very careful of that. Yeah, and I would say probably 100% of us on this call are very aware of MOS. Isograd is a certification company started in Paris, France, and our focus before we launched certification was more around digital skills assessments for industry. Our certifications are unique amongst any other certification company in two ways. Number one, we use adaptive testing and item response theory for scoring. So as I take a certification, the test adapts to my knowledge and my skill. So my certification becomes my certification. Mirwais takes his, it adapts to him, whoever, it adapts to you. And at the end, we receive our numeric score like any other certification. But instead of worrying about a pass or fail, based on my numeric score, I'll be certified at a level of proficiency. So we have a 5-level scale of proficiency from basic to expert. And based on my results, I'm certified there. So it's a very different approach to certification. What's unique about it, especially when we work with academic institutions, and so we work in the States, we work down into middle schools, and obviously we work all the way up into higher ed internationally, is that regardless of the program of study where Excel is being used, in some, right, we're going to really get into Excel. So like in Randy's courses, we're going to get into Excel. I mean, it's important, and we're going to get deep into it really to help build knowledge and skill. Where in some courses, Excel is a component of the course, if that makes sense. And so instead of worrying about trying to get all students to a cut score in a test, what we can say is, let's just focus on the knowledge and skills, and then students will get certified based on kind of where we get them as well. So hopefully that provides some clarity.
It does. And to your point, Daniel, not all jobs out there that require Excel skills, not all jobs require them at the MOS certified level, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, not everybody needs to be, advanced or expert. I mean, there are some jobs, and I'll use the job like for the medical clinic. I mean, it's basic skills. Can a person get into Excel, input some data, save it, find the file? I mean, and those are skills that we might probably every one of us on here goes, well, those are simple skills, we get them. But for a lot of people who are in current roles where those skills were never really taught to them, and they're returning to education because an employer is saying that, or maybe they've been displaced because of COVID, now they're having to return to education, that's a whole new world for them. And so that ability to kind of move them and put them where they should be skill-wise based on their area of interest is much easier than worrying about trying to get them to potentially pass a certification that ultimately is much, you know, it's a lot different than where we're actually going to skill them in the course of study.
Thank you, Daniel. So the key takeaways for me from this session or this part of the session is that whether if it's TOSA certification or MOS certification or our digital badges, it's about quantifying what you've learned, what you've mastered, and then showing it to a prospective employer. And so SIMnet can help you for MOS certification. We have the MOS aligned content. We have the TOSA certification aligned content. We have our own digital badges, which at the 4 levels that Randy said, the 4 belts, the white, yellow, purple, and black belt, they quantify a certain mastery of skill sets. And then students or students, when they graduate, they go out into the employment force, they have a way, they have a certificate, they have a badge, or they have a MOS certificate to show that this is what I've learned, this is what I know. And then that will hopefully improve their chances of landing on that appropriate job. And the other benefit that Randy did touch upon is around the lifelong learning. As far as I know, we are the only provider that provides lifelong access to our solution. So if a student takes an Excel course in their first year or second year, and then a few moons down the road, they graduate and they've forgotten some of those and they're going into an interview, they can go back because they have lifelong access. They can refresh all of those skills that they learned through the 3 modalities, show me, guide me, let me try. They can refresh those skills and then go into that interview with a little more confidence, if you will. So yeah, we do have a couple of questions for you, Daniel. Fred is asking, does your company do any online certification or is it all on site?
Fred, thanks for asking that. Yeah, we do online testing as well as on-site. Our online testing has been around for about 5.5 years now. So we've been doing it prior to COVID, which is great. Even pre-COVID, those institutions that were 100% online already, or teaching hybrid type courses, our online solution allows that student to take the certification anytime and that works best for them. So 24/7. Or you can choose to have your students come on site and do them in person if you want.
A follow-up to that from Fred also is, if an employer requires MOS certification, but I have a TOSA certification, would that be acceptable? What do you think?
Yeah, I think generally, similar to, the badging that McGraw-Hill has within SIMnet, when an individual has TOSA certification, what you're able to do is quantify what they know and what they can do at their level. So I know as we're working with companies that are starting to, see and kind of recognize the value of TOSA certifications, we're seeing more and more, once they kind of look at it and say, well, what does this mean to me? When they go, okay, you scored 700 out of 1,000, but here's your skills. Here's what you can do. It's delivering more kind of positive data to a prospective employer about what Daniel Bird can do versus I've just passed and then I'm having to try to articulate that myself.
Thank you, Daniel. Randy, we have a question for you. When you were talking about SIMnet and Office 365, a question came up saying that, is the desktop versions of Office 365 included in SIMnet, or do students have to buy it extra?
So I know in the state, it's not included in SIMnet. No, the simulated content they can do, but the projects it is required that they have the desktop version of Office 365, Office 2019, whichever version you're using, or Office 2021 that's coming out later this year. So kind of crazy to think about, but anyway, so yeah, they do need that. I know in the States, the students at pretty much any university get it's through Office in Education. I don't know that the same in Canada or not, but get it free. So get Office 365, and that's the desktop version. So Office 365, just little terminology. It's actually called Microsoft 365 now, is the umbrella, a large umbrella of products. Underneath that are the Office apps, the desktop apps, Office Online, OneDrive, OneNote, all these other products, apps that are underneath the Microsoft umbrella. So students, and Mirwais or Laura, do you know if Canadian, or some of those of you out there, Canadian students get Office 365 free?
Yes, in our schools they do as well. Most of our schools get the Office 365 as well.
Yeah, I thought so. I wasn't 100% sure, but yeah. Then and again, it's such a great benefit to have that Office 365. And they can just go in there and say, "Hey, install desktop apps," and they get the most current version. And in SIMnet, if there are differences between Office 365 and Office 2019, we build that right into the project instructions. Say, "Hey, if you don't see this button or whatever, try this," because sometimes there's little differences, and we are constantly monitoring that, and we make those changes in the background on these project instructions so they work for you and your students, on the front end of that, and so that you don't come in on Monday morning and have 40 emails about this project.
Thank you, Randy. And Mary did confirm that yes, Office 365 is available through their colleges. But she's asking, does SIMnet include Windows and Office essential components?
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, yeah, we do. In addition to, if you buy any of the textbooks or buy a license for any of the textbook, there's quite a bit additional. There's some free computer concepts chapters, SIMbooks in there. We have, at the beginning of our textbook, we have an intro chapter that covers Windows, overview of Office and file management. And then there's a bunch of small other little pieces. There's internet browsers, there's stuff on Outlook. There's a few that all come free, components that come free in SIMnet. So yeah, that's a lot in there.
Thank you, Randy. One more from Majid is saying, is the Access module of SIMnet as elaborate as Excel that we saw today?
Oh yeah, I teach a 3-unit Access class, and the Access book is awesome. Yeah, it's thorough and it's wonderful. Again, you do have the limitations of Mac. Mac users have to, use a Windows machine. I know my Mac users in my class, they log into our virtual desktop and work in a Windows environment on a virtual desktop and do their work there. But yeah, the Access is absolutely wonderful. Again, I did pretty robust 3-unit class of Access I teach.
Excellent. Mary's wondering if there are any supporting Windows simulations or projects.
Some simulations, yeah. Some of that, we do have some Windows just standalone we have the intro chapter in my series that's part of all the books, and it covers some Windows and has some simulated content in there. We do have some additional Windows content in SIMnet as well that comes free. A lot of these smaller pieces come free. They're not part of a textbook. They're just add-on stuff for us as instructors. Yeah, computer concepts. We have a whole free textbook in there that has, I don't know, 7-8 chapters of computer concepts. If you wanted to, pick and choose a few of those to add to your class, you can do that as well.
Thank you. And Roswell is wondering if the older versions in SIMnet are still available and can be viewed or learned, since some students may have older versions, maybe going as back as 2007, like Word 2007.
Yeah, great question. You basically, whatever license a student buys. So students buying them now are going to get the 365 2019 most likely, or we still have they still can purchase the 365 2016 version. They're going to have that as long as that's around. I mean, they can go back. So a student that took this back in 2007 and has that, they still have access to it. So, but what you kind of get the license for what you buy. So basically, like buying a book, if you bought a physical book, that book's in your library and you have that. Same thing in SIMnet. You have a library in SIMnet, and the books, the license that you have access to that in your library, as well as all those free pieces.
Hey, Randy, we have another question. Can instructors create their own projects in SIMnet?
Great question. Yeah, we do have what are called community projects. So if you have a project that you want to create as a auto-graded project in SIMnet, yes, we have, you have to do the start file, the instructions, and the end file, and then you can turn that in through whoever your representative is or and SIMnet will do that. SIMnet will create that for you. Now, with that said, usually the best way to do that would be, whatever textbook you're using in there. If you're using an in-practice series, look and find a project that might meet those needs. Find one that's existing already, or a capstone project. We have capstone projects, a lot of them at the advanced level, that are outside of SIMnet. But take a project that's already existing, modify it to meet your needs, because it's hard to write projects in such a way that they're specific enough that the auto grading works correctly. So that's the key. Is it can't be, hey, just do this that's real vague, because it can't auto grade. Auto grade has to be pretty specific, looking for specific outcomes, whether it's a report in Access or a slide in PowerPoint or a cell in Excel. So yeah, great questions, though.
So those are custom auto-graded projects, but they could still create custom projects that are manually graded, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You could create your own manually graded ones. Yeah, and there is a feature. So, and this would go back to the integrity thing also, is let's say you wanted to do pause and practice project, and have that as and have an integrity check on that. You can put the start file as a resource in SIMnet and have it embed an integrity code in it. So students download, they would do the pause and practice projects in that file and then upload it to SIMnet. And it wouldn't auto grade it, but it would detect for plagiarism. And then I could go ahead and just hand grade those projects. So yeah, quite a few options. The community projects can be auto grade, can set up auto grading in SIMnet. Now you can't, I don't know that SIMnet, there's a little turnaround time on doing those. And if you gave them 12 projects, they would probably say, no, why don't you pick one or two, to do those. But yes, it is, we have quite a few community projects in there now.
Fantastic. And Mary has a question as well. And Mary, if I don't get this right and you want to come off mute and ask Randy, please feel free to jump in and qualify. So does SIMnet have the ability to take a master course and push dates by 120 days, for example, for new semester sections?
Yep. Super easy. You basically, I'm going to take my Access course this semester and I'm going to push it to fall. So I'm going to just copy to a new course, and I'm going to say, okay, I do it so it keeps it consistent, but I always open my class the Wednesday before the term starts. So then all I do is I say, okay, what's the difference? And there's a little calendar on there that will actually calculate the dates. Okay, this class started on the Wednesday this semester. This class starts on the Wednesday this semester. Shift the dates by that many number of dates. And it does. Now, it does a good job. It does it, it's not going to be perfect because holidays are different from fall semester, so it's not exact. But boy, it's better than typing them all over, or redoing all of them. So yeah, it does. Super easy to copy over class from one term to another, to shift the dates from one term to another. So yeah, it's amazingly slick.
If I may add on to that, that's great. I don't think we have any further questions, but if there were, we will look at all these questions. If we didn't answer some of them, we'll follow up with the answers. But if I may add on to what Randy just said, so around when we started with SIMnet, not a lot of smaller schools had their own big bang LMSs like Blackboard and D2L. So we built a lot of LMS type of course management, roster management capabilities right within SIMnet. So the functionality is not just limited to teaching Microsoft Office content, but around course management, student management, roster management, gradebooks synchronizations, LMS integrations. So SIMnet can potentially be used as an LMS tool as well.
And reports, if you wanted to run a report on how students are doing on certain learning outcomes on a project or on an exam, you can run an item analysis report. Yeah, it's pretty amazing the amount of data that you can extract.
Excellent. So Laura, I'm going to pass it over to you. I know we are close to our time here, 2:30, so I'll let you wrap it up for us.
We are, and as Mirwais, you said, that is a wrap. It's been a really great, engaging conversation. I want to start off by thanking Randy and Daniel for your time today, for facilitating such a great event. And I also want to thank our audience members as well for taking time out of your busy day to come join us and to learn more about how you can, leverage SIMnet in your fall 2021 courses or beyond. So if you do have more questions and you do want to sort of reach out and have them answered by Randy or Daniel, please feel free to email me and we can connect everyone and we can just continue the conversation. My email's on the screen. It's laura.gergley@mheducation.com. And other than that, I just want to say thank you again. And I know everyone's sort of tying up their winter semester. So have a great end to your winter semesters and be safe and well. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Randy and Daniel.
Bye, y'all.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.